Yeah, I think BMW copied it. I really do.
Hey, kicking your own bike. The fob not close enough?
Yeah, probably.
Wait, what'd you do?
Oh, it's the fob's in my pocket.
But now that it's started, I won't have to...
Yeah, no, you'll be good.
You were too far away?
Yeah. It's a bit hot and humid. I had to close my visor so you can actually hear what I'm saying, and we've just been pushing bikes around the driveway to take pictures and whatnot, but here I am on Eric's brand new 2019 Honda Africa Twin with a dual clutch transmission, the DCT as it's known. I've never ridden an Africa Twin before, although I did have one on order once, and Honda are masters of producing bikes that are great all-rounders and very reliable, so quite looking forward to riding this. I haven't ridden a dual clutch transmission before. I've ridden an auto box on a EV, on the Zero models, but never one of the Hondas, and they obviously make them for the Goldwing and the Africa Twin particularly. And it kind of feels a little bit strange as it automatically knocks it down the box itself, and it goes up the gears very, very quickly in the standard drive mode, and that's what I'm in at the moment. And before you know it, 40 miles an hour, you're in 5th or 6th gear. Oh, not sure what's happening here, but it looks like we're going to have to do a U-turn. No problem. So U-turn feels pretty good, pretty easy. So getting back to the test proper is Eric and my GSA. The pickup's pretty nice. So it's quite a thumpy feel to it. It's almost like a big single in the way which it feels, and it kind of sounds like a V-twin in some ways. Maybe it's a 270-degree crank, because this is obviously a parallel twin. And I think the bike makes about 95 horsepower, and it's probably around I would say, I have to check the exact specs, but I believe it's about 250 kilo, just over 500 pounds in the DCT form, which is obviously a little bit heavier than the standard manual transmission bike. Now this particular bike is the, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but the 30th anniversary Africa Twin, and the original model was resplendent in this beautiful red, white and blue, as is this, and it was very iconic bike at the time. So the very, very special bikes at the time were made by Honda Racing Corporation, HRC, and really they only made 2 production bikes that I would say were very, very special. Obviously there was the NR750, which had 8-valve heads and oval pistons and dual com rods. It was very, very unique and phallic waving for Honda. And there was the NC30, of course, the RVF 750R as well. But I would say of the road bikes, really the only true kind of race bike with lights was the RC30 and that's why it's very iconic. And in terms of off-road bikes or other Honda models, nothing else really had a proper HRC QDOS, which meant, you know, the racing arm really built it and the quality was sublime, except the original Africa Twin, the 750 model, and it really looked great in red, white and blue. It had clocks which were wrapped in kind of foam to cut down on weight and vibrations, and it was just, you know, it had the gold wheels and just looked absolutely gorgeous. It was very, very nice. So this is a direct homage to that, and it feels nice actually as the miles are picking up. It's feeling more and more intuitive. I like the way it handles. It steers really nicely, much nicer than Eric's Multistrada in my personal opinion. I like the way this the bike steers. It's got a skinnier front tyre, so you know, if it does go eventually in the wet, you've got a little bit less grip to hang you in there. And these are brand new tyres. Eric's only picked this bike up a few hours ago, so I can't go too mad with it. But when we get out on the open road, I'm going to move it to sport mode, and we'll see what a difference that makes. In fact, let's do that now. So this is sport mode, and it's definitely a lot more urgency. It's hanging onto the gears much longer, and there's a little bit more of a rorty sound coming from the exhaust system. I don't think there's any power valve assist going on there, but it just is a case of, because it's holding onto the gears a bit longer. Oh, it's a deer, gotta watch out for those. It's just that little bit more lively, and it feels pretty nice. Yeah, if I switch it back to drive, it's very much like a dumbed down touring mode or a commuting mode. It's going to get you good gas on the freeway, but it's much less exciting in the real world. There's more police around. I have no idea what's happening here. Maybe we have an escaped convict or something like that, but so we're in manual mode now. Couldn't quite find the paddle shift on the front. Now I have. It seems very intuitively placed for your index finger. I've got quite long fingers. I think somebody with a short short hand span might find it a little bit of a stretch, because this heated grip insert we have here, so your hand doesn't go completely flush against the controls. It's up here, but it feels good. The downshifter is nice on it, and of course if I don't downshift, yeah, it's just gone from second down to first automatically, just as a automatic car would in manual mode. And the shifter itself is it's pretty quick actually, pretty slick, even at low revs, not an issue. And seems pretty fast, probably as fast as a reasonable car DCT, such as the one in my BMW M2 competition or a Porsche PDK, say. Definitely a little bit faster than, say, something like an MX-5 Miata, for instance. I'm digging the manual mode, because you can obviously choose your gears and revs to suit, and I think once you get used to the sweet spots in that, it's going to be very, very nice. But you haven't got any heavy clutch, you've got no foot lever to use. It's kind of all good. First time I've looked for a clutch lever, I have to say. First is quite a tall gear. I keep on changing up a little bit early first, and obviously I don't want to over rev this. This is a brand new bike and it's not mine. Eric's very kindly let me actually ride it, but I think first gear is a little bit tall, and that's probably showing its off-road chops, because this bike is very, very good off-road, particularly in DCT. Yeah, Yeah, I've tried the drive mode. The drive mode's very subdued. The sport mode's got really good pickup, and I really like the manual mode.
Off the line, it's surprisingly good. Like you can get that wheel up if you hit it, it'll go.
Well, I'll let you do that.
In the break-in period.
Yeah, that's a kind of typical comment from Eric. He likes his bikes, and he knows how to ride, how to get the most out of them. So even more police. Wow. Well, that might explain something at least. Yeah, I like the manual mode because you can you know, really get what gears and revs you want, but it's so much less effort than the, you know, clutch lever and the foot, so it's good. So apologies if that's a bit shouty through the mic. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 60. Let's slow it down again. And yeah, that feels very sweet, very nice. The seat is it's pretty good. It's very broad. It's very flat. That's usually bodes quite well. And I like the feel of the suspension. It feels very quite firm and nice, actually. A bit like the BMW in dynamic mode. I'm not sure what it'd be like over distance or when it's got a few miles on it, but at present I like the general feel of it. It's very, very nice. And the mirrors are vibrating a little bit. They're just slightly high for me. I think Eric's torso must be slightly longer. We're about the same height, probably got longer legs, so I don't want to adjust the mirrors and mess them up for him. I can see what's behind me, but it's a little bit more of a stretch. And just at certain revs, this left one particularly, probably not sure whether the camera will pick it up, but it's a little bit vibey. I mean, it is a twin at the end of the day. It's not an inline 4 or a 6 or anything, but manually down. Zoom. Yeah, so there's quite a bit of travel on that front suspension. That goes a long way, but it actually feels plush, and the rear feels fairly firm, and it's quite a tall seat height, I would say. I'm 6'2", and I'm kind of struggling to flat foot it. I can just about flat foot it.
It looks good. I enjoy watching it go.
Yeah, it's really nice. And you've got, I'm not sure we mentioned it earlier, you've got the G button there for G mode, and so when you're off-road and you're in sandy conditions of gravel, that will give you a more direct drive, and that's kind of unique to the DCT model. And you've got the heated grips there. This little unit is just the Denali spotlights that Eric's had put on it. He's obviously got his little Ram X grip here as well, and these bar end are this kind of purple colour as standard, as is the gold bars. I do like the risers, they're really nice. That's something I would like for the GS and ROX risers, to just elevate the bars. And the bars, really nice height. You get a nice flat angle to your forearms on this, so that actually feels quite nice. The clocks are you know, slightly dated when you're used to driving around on, you know, $30,000 motorcycles like Eric and I are, but you know, it has everything you need, and it's pretty clear. I think once you're kind of used to the interface and stuff, it tells you everything you need. I do like the fuel gauge and the temperature gauge and stuff, because it has a lot of increments, and I like that. It just is a little bit clearer, although obviously when you're on reserve, I'd imagine this will display how many miles you have remaining. I do like the turn signals, the indicators here. They're very long, very thin, and they just look the part. They look really, really nice, and I really quite like that. Alright, let's switch back the modes. It's a little bit tricky to tell which mode you're in visually, but you can feel the difference, that's for sure. And it's very nice of Eric to allow me to ride this. This bike's, you know, only got about 10 miles on the clock. It shows his trust in me, and I respect that. And it's really nice to be able to ride this. It's been out a little while now, obviously, but the 30th anniversary is brand new. Haven't seen any others on the road yet. It's very, very nice. Ah, there we go. I think you have to toggle between the R and the M on here before you switch back to the sport or manual mode, and then there's a little S come up here to show you're in sport, and if I toggle it again it goes to D for drive or touring. And you know, when you're stuck behind traffic like this, you're commuting, you're doing 30 miles an hour, you probably just want it in touring. It's going to give a softer power delivery and keep things smooth, and it's definitely smooth. I didn't have, you know, I rode it all of half a mile. I had to do a U-turn, and it was pretty effortless. I gave myself a little bit more room than I would do normally, just purely because it's not my machine, and the very, very last thing you want to do is drop it, right? But I think you know, the width of the road we have here, I can easily do a U-turn within the width of the white lines. The bike feels very balanced, as do most Hondas. It's pretty nice on that front. The screen is not the widest. I think maybe for riding in winter time you'd want some winglets possibly, and a lip at the top, or a combination of, or just you know, a bigger screen basically. But I do think overall, all things considered, it's very nice. And I can see we've got some at the top of the forks there, we've got what looks to be both rebound compression and a preload adjuster, so that's nice to see as well. So I had to pull away with really, really slow revs there, almost to the point that you'd be stalling it, or it'd be getting very juddery with a manual clutch, unless you feathered it to make it smooth and eased it in. But it was just very smooth, no problem at all, very linear. Now some of you may have spotted this over here and may think, well, it's really it's a manual, you're lying. No, this thing here is a brake, and it's a long way out from your hands. You can see that I've got big hands. It's a long way out so you don't accidentally pull it if you've got clutch bikes that you ride with a clutch lever often. And basically when you stop, you pull that in. There's a secondary little lever here where you lock the brake, and then the bike is locked on the hill when you're in neutral. And so that's what that's for, basically. It's pretty out here, isn't it? It's been kind of thundery and showery this morning, so it's good of Eric to let me come out on the bike, because it's brand new. He doesn't want to get it dirty, I understand, and he doesn't want to be riding on wet roads with brand new tyres. That's never fun. Let's toggle to sport mode. And you can instantly hear the revs go up, and that deeper tone to the exhaust. It's very, very nice. Well, you certainly notice it's, you know, it's a lighter machine than my big GSA, and oh, let's watch out, Mr. Honda there in the SUV. Let's whiz round this roundabout. That was okay. So I deliberately, halfway around that roundabout then, I deliberately oh yeah, let's switch it back to drive. So I deliberately held, I deliberately did something you shouldn't do, obviously. I rolled off the throttle, and I did that deliberately because I just wanted to see whether it would, with this tall skinny front wheel, whether it would push the front end wide. And although I wasn't hammering through there at a million miles an hour, it was really no problem. So that's always a nice thing, because, you know, in the mountains you can overcook it on a corner. You get halfway through the bend, you realise it's much tighter than you thought it was, and you've got to make a decision whether you manage that on the throttle or on the brakes, or a combination of both. And I think it would perform admirably there. So yeah, no real issues or concerns. So I like the agility. You can go from kind of line to line very easily, and the ride quality is pretty good actually. The ride quality is better than I was expecting at this price point. As mentioned, you know, Eric and I have $30,000 adventure bikes once they're loaded up with panniers and accessories and stuff, and this is at a you know, very keen price point. I don't know the exact MSRP. You can kind of go and look it up online, but I think off the top of my head it's about 16, and you know, it feels like it's worth 16, that's for sure. It's not, you know, the last couple of bikes I've ridden some nice bikes that I've really enjoyed riding, but I've come away thinking it's a nice bike, it's a potentially good second bike for me, say, but I don't think it's worth the money. You know, I think that, you know, priced it, you know, whatever it is, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 too much. This, I think, is pretty much on the money. You know, it's a beautiful looking bike in this colour scheme, particularly. I'm a real sucker for red, white and blue and the gold wheels, hence my GSA, and I think BMW really stole the concept for the spray job from this. Really, it was never really a motorsport spray job, derived from the 80s, 90s, but this really is an HRC derived colour scheme, which is nice. And I think if it was my money and I was buying, I would definitely go for the DCT. I think it's for the intended use of this bike, I think it's going to be better. I think when you're off-road, it's nice to concentrate on the terrain without having to worry about what gear you're in or stalling it. You can't stall a DCT box, right? So you put it in drive, and you know, select one of your drive modes, put gravel on if it's a bit slippery, and away you go. Great off-road, and it's not as big and heavy as say the GSA, etc. So you know, you're going to have plenty of fun. It's not going to get out of hand. But when you want to go touring, particularly solo, I think you could do it 2 up, particularly if you're not huge people. But I think solo with the panniers as Eric has, give these buzzards a little bit of room, having hit a wild turkey recently. I think you know, this would be great. And in fact, around the August time frame, I think it is, end of July time, we're going away, 3 or 4 of us, for a couple of days, and Eric's one of them, and I think he'll take this bike, and I think it will be a good choice. A spot person doesn't know where he's going. It's nice.
Uh-oh, I need your fob. It won't start. Oh, look at that beautiful screen.
That's better. So it really is a very marked difference moving from the drive mode, or touring mode as I'd prefer to call it, to the sport mode, as it should be really. But the sport mode isn't so aggressive that it's not usable. You know how it can just, with some vehicles, it can be so annoyingly aggressive. You really have to be racing everywhere rather than riding in a kind of sporty manner, you know. And I think this strikes the balance just nicely really. It's not revving the nuts off the engine or anything like that, but it's given it a much greater sense of urgency, which is nice. It's exactly what it's designed to do. And at last the sun comes out. Ta-da! That's nice. It shows up the colour scheme resplendently. Eric looks pretty good. Looks pretty comfortable on my bike there. It's the first time he's actually been on my bike. I think he's ridden Jerry's when Jerry picked up his 1250 GSA, but he's probably not ridden one since, so it's kind of nice for him as well to have a little change of scene. So we're off to Dreamland Barbecue now for a pork sandwich or something, and then we can talk about and debate general thoughts on the bike. And I think it's good. I think it was a nice addition to Eric's ever expansive stable. And I was a little surprised when he said he was buying one, because he's already got the multi-strada, which obviously fills the adventure side of things and touring, and he also has had an off-road bike as well. And this is, you know, a little bit expensive to go off-roading on, brand new. I think some gentle fire trails are fine, and that's all we tend to do, so it's probably okay with that. But you wouldn't want to, you know, take it out in anger in muddy fields and stuff, and over huge rocks. You buy just the cheap smashed up bike for that, or a purpose-built bike like a KTM or something, you know. But I think he was very impressed with the bike following his 3-week tour in Africa. Seemed to be able to do everything he wanted it to do. And as we know, they build a nice reliable bike, Honda, and if you're not riding all of your bikes all of the time, it's nice when you go and press the starter and it, you know, chugs into life. And I think you shouldn't have any problems on that front in terms of dependability rather. Chaos rules as usual. When they're all like that, it's better just to sit back and let them all sort themselves out. It only takes a second, and then because you're on a bike, you know, you have the acceleration, you've got the power to weight ratio, you can get back to whatever position you wanted to in the traffic after they've stopped tripping each other up. And Mr. Policeman. So I think we need to get across there by the look of it. That's where Eric's pointing and a poking. Let's go back to the manual mode. Now, of course, one thing that's lovely about a DCT is that in effect it's also in the manual mode, it's also effectively a pro shifter, so you can go up and down the box even up and down the box without rolling off the throttle, and just change gears at will. There's no, as well as not having to pull in a clutch lever, you don't have to roll off the throttle. And that's a distinct advantage when you want to particularly accelerate smoothly and effortlessly. And it's a real advantage when you have a pillion particularly as well, because you don't, you know, if you've got a pillion that's not that experienced, or, you know, sits a bit too far forward, you can end up head banging your helmets quite easily. But with DCT, well, you can just leave it in auto if you want it smooth, but if you want it a little bit sportier, you can have it in manual shift. But because you're not having to roll off the throttle, pull in the clutch and unsettle the bike slightly, it's much smoother. So those kind of helmet interface conditions happen far less frequently, which is another pro. Now, I see he's lost a cover there already. I'll tell him about that, that'll please him no end. And what else can I tell you about the bike? Well, I think that's most things. He has fitted some Denali spotlights at the front, and very nice they are too. They're not too big and in your face, but they are nice and bright, and that'll give some extra attention when he's got oncoming cars. I'm still on the Michelin Anarchy Adventures down there, and I've done nearly 5,000 miles now. They'll definitely want replacing at 6, but they do look like they'll last till 6, so I'm delighted about that, because they're is seemingly as good in the wet as the pilots, and you know, in the dry they are sublime as well, and really good at varied temperatures from
might be filming.
From icy snow to really hot days like today, where we've got, well, about 82 degrees at the moment, but it's also very humid, so it's not the nicest day really to be riding. But hey, when somebody says, do you want to ride my brand new bike, you don't turn them down, do you? 2019 Africa Twin DCT 30th anniversary. Nice one, Honda. Nice one, Eric. So I'm back home now, having ridden Eric's 30th anniversary Honda Africa Twin DCT in the resplendent HRC red, white and blue colours, and there was very little that I didn't like about it. There's nothing I really hated, but I think the clocks look a bit kind of a bit dated by modern kind of TFT touchscreen standards. It's just a little bit of vibes from mirror, nothing to write home about, and the front tyre may lack a little bit of grip, just being that bit taller and thinner than, you know, a regular 17-inch with a 120 or even a 19-inch like on the GS, for instance. But that's the nature of the bike, you know, because it's genuinely good off-road, and if you've got to go over a log or something like that, you want a skinnier, taller front tyre. And in general terms, I really like the bike. It feels very sturdy, it feels very smooth, and the DCT, if it was my money, I would definitely go for the DCT. It's better off-road, and on-road it's just very relaxing. There's kind of three kind of sides to it really. You put it in tour mode, great for when you're stuck in traffic, great for when you're on the freeway touring. Put it in sport when your road opens up a bit and you want a little bit more pep, or you know, you want to get away from the lights quicker. And then of course once you get into the really twisty stuff and you really want to kind of mix it with the guys, you've got the DCT paddle shifters, and the paddle shifters effectively make it a pro shifter, so you can go up and down the box without rolling off the throttle, without being on the overrun, without pulling in the clutch, without having to move your foot to change gear, and that's particularly nice. It's much smoother than a pro shifter, and I would say if you were going downhill, coming to a bumpy off camber bend that tightens up a bit too quick, whereby if you were to slap it down the box on a pro shifter like my GSA, it might unsettle the bike very slightly. You'd be more inclined to pull in the clutch and kind of feather it round a little bit, you know, in knocking it down a gear, etc. With the DCT, it's effortless. Just hit the button and you're down a gear in a blink of an eye, and that's a real world kind of pro to having the DCT, I think. And it's also got 3 levels that you can change the kind of aggression of, or how far it revs before it will automatically change gear as well. So there's 3 kind of presets, and then you have your G for kind of an off-road gravel mode, which will give you a more direct drive in kind of sandy conditions and stuff. It's a bit of a kind of Goldilocks bike for many people. It's kind of just right in terms of being in between the 800s and the 1200s, in terms of kind of size and weight and agility and performance to some extent as well. And I think it's nicely built. They make a great solo touring bike, and maybe even a weekend touring bike for a couple. Quite good for a couple actually with the DCT box, because less head banging in terms of smooth gear changes either in auto or even in the manual aspect of the DCT. So overall, good bike. Very pleased for Eric. Be interesting to see how he gets on with it in the coming months, and I'll let you know in terms of a general update at a later date. So thanks for watching, and as always, ride often, ride carefully, ride on.